You can learn a great deal about a child from the second between your request and their response. You say their name across the room. They do not look up. You repeat it, a little louder this time, and now two stories begin to compete in your head. One story says they are drifting. The other says they are overwhelmed. On the surface, those two realities can look almost identical. A child misses the cue. A teacher writes, inattentive. A relative says, he's in his own world. A parent starts reading symptom lists late at night and discovers the most disorienting part of modern parenting. Sometimes the categories explain everything, and sometimes they explain nothing at all. That confusion does not mean you are failing. It usually means you are close enough to your child to notice that the same behavior can come from very different internal experiences. And that is the real beginning of wise parenting. Not with labels, not with fear, but with the decision to stop asking only what the child is doing and start asking what problem the child's brain is trying to solve. That shift matters because ADHD and autism can overlap in visible ways while diverging in invisible ones. Both can produce missed cues, social friction, messy mornings, emotional storms, and a child who looks unlike the other children in the room. Both can even exist in the same child. But when parents confuse appearance with cause, they often offer the wrong kind of help. They try to increase pressure when the child needs clarity. They add structure when the child needs sensory relief. They lecture about manners when the real issue is timing, processing, or overload. The tragedy is not simply mislabeling. It is misunderstanding the child's experience so consistently that the child begins to feel misunderstood by the very people trying hardest to help. The goal here is not diagnosis. Diagnosis belongs to careful professionals, and even good clinicians need time. The goal is a better lens. Because once you start seeing the difference between distraction and discomfort, between novelty seeking and predictability seeking, between impulse and misread social code, the entire emotional tone of parenting changes. Take eye contact, one of the most misunderstood signals in childhood. Many parents are taught to read eye contact as a moral cue. If you look at me, you are listening. If you do not, you are dismissive. But for many autistic children, eye contact is not a simple sign of connection. It can be an intense stream of information arriving all at once. Face, expression, expectation, language, emotional tone, the pressure to respond correctly. Looking away may not mean disconnecting. It may be how they reduce incoming data so they can process what you are saying. In a child with ADHD, the picture can be very different. Eye contact often breaks, not because the face is too much, but because attention has already been pulled by a competing stimulus or by the child's own internal movement of thought. One child turns away to manage overload. Another turns away because attention slides. The outside behavior may look identical. The support is not. One child may need you to lower social intensity and reduce demands in the moment. The other may need shorter directions, novelty, or a prompt that re-engages attention without shame. Now look at routine, because this is where many parents become even more confused. The child with autism may cling to routine because predictability reduces cognitive uncertainty. The same breakfast, the same route, the same sequence before bed can function like emotional scaffolding. It is not simply preference. It can be how the nervous system keeps the day within tolerable limits. A child with ADHD may also appear to need routine, but often for a very different reason. They do not always love routine. they often need external structure because their internal system for organizing action is unreliable. In one child, change is distressing because it disturbs expectation and sensory order. In the other, change may be welcome, even exciting, but daily functioning collapses without visible supports, reminders, and repeated cues. Parents sometimes miss this and assume every resistance to transition means rigidity. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it means the child never encoded the steps in the first place and is now drowning in a task that looks easy from the outside. That distinction changes how you respond. Do you prepare the child for change, or do you help sequence the task? The answer matters. The same is true in social life. People often say both autistic children and children with ADHD struggle socially, as if that were one thing. It is not one thing. An autistic child may miss the unspoken rhythm of conversation, the subtle timing of turn-taking, the invisible rules other children seem to absorb without instruction. They may not realize when a topic has stopped being shared and started being one-sided. Or they may understand more than adults assume, but be too overloaded or too slow in processing to respond in real time. A child with ADHD, by contrast, may understand the rules very well and still break them because impulse outruns intention. They interrupt because the thought feels as if it will vanish unless spoken now. They blurt because inhibition arrives too late. Both children can leave a birthday party looking misunderstood, but one often needs social cues made explicit, slowed down, and practiced. The other may need help inserting a pause between thought and speech. The difference is not academic. It is the difference between telling a child to try harder and teaching the actual skill they do not yet have. Language offers another useful window. Autistic children are often described as literal, but what matters is not the stereotype. What matters is how easily implied meaning gets lost. You say, "Can you get your shoes?" meaning, "Please do it now." The child answers, "Yes," because they heard the question as asked and did not automatically infer the social intention beneath it. Or you make a casual joke and the child reacts to the precise wording instead of the social signal. Children with ADHD may have a different language profile entirely. They can have rich thoughts, vivid associations, and strong intuition, but difficulty organizing those thoughts into orderly expression. Their speech may rush ahead of structure. The middle of the story disappears. The answer comes before the explanation. They know what they mean, but the path from idea to language is crowded. One child may need cleaner language from adults. The other may need help slowing and sequencing what they already know. When you recognize that, frustration drops on both sides. The conversation stops feeling like defiance and starts feeling like translation. Interests can also mislead adults. Many autistic children develop deep, enduring interests that bring pleasure, order, mastery, and relief. The interest is not merely a hobby. It can be a stabilizing architecture for the mind. They return to it because depth feels regulating. The child with ADHD may also become intensely absorbed, but the pattern often looks different. The fuel is novelty, stimulation, challenge, or immediate reward. One week it is astronomy, then coding, then skateboards, then military history, each entered with enormous energy and left behind just as dramatically. To the uninformed adult, both children can look obsessed, but one is often building depth inside predictability, while the other is chasing engagement because understimulated attention is hard to hold. The parenting response changes once you see that. With one child, the question becomes how to respect the interest while widening life around it. With the other, the question becomes how to convert bursts of fascination into sustainable habits without punishing the nervous system for needing stimulation in the first place. Sensory life may be the most revealing difference of all because it sits underneath behavior like an invisible climate. Many autistic children are living in a world where sound, texture, smell, light, and bodily sensation arrive with unusual intensity or unusual fragmentation. A shirt seam can dominate the day. Fluorescent lights can quietly exhaust them before math class begins. A crowded cafeteria can feel less like lunch and more like neurological traffic. ADHD can involve sensory issues too, but often the pattern is less about raw sensory pain and more about regulation. The child seeks movement, fidgets, taps, crashes into furniture, chews sleeves, or talks loudly because the body is trying to generate the stimulation needed to stay organized. Parents may read both profiles as too sensitive or too hyper, but one child may be defending against too much input, while the other is trying to create enough input to function. Without that distinction, adults often make matters worse. They push exposure when the child is already overloaded, or they demand stillness from a body that is using movement as a form of cognitive survival. Then there are meltdowns, a word used so casually now that it often hides more than it reveals. In autism, a meltdown is frequently the end point of accumulated overload. Too much uncertainty, too much sensory pressure, too many transitions, too many demands without recovery. And eventually, the system stops negotiating. In ADHD, emotional explosions can look similar, but the pathway is often different. Frustration tolerance may be low, inhibition may be weak, disappointment may hit hard and fast, and the child's feelings can flood the room before reflective thought has time to catch up. One storm is often the collapse that follows saturation. The other may be the ignition that follows blocked desire or sudden dysregulation. Both are real. Both deserve respect, but they are not best handled the same way. Overloaded children often need reduced input, recovery time, and a parent who understands that talking more will not restore control. Dysregulated children with ADHD may need co-regulation, brevity, and later help reconstructing the moment so they can build better emotional breaks over time. Transitions tell a similar story. When an autistic child resists shifting from one activity to another, the issue is often not stubbornness. It can be a profound difficulty moving from one cognitive state to the next, especially when the next state is unclear. Their brain may need time to detach, preview, and reorder expectations. For a child with ADHD, transitions can fail for a different reason. They do not disengage because they are hyper-focused, or they leave one thing and then drift before the next thing takes hold. Parents see the same surface result: impossible mornings, repeated reminders, a child who seems not to move. But underneath, one child may need countdowns, visual schedules, and preparation for uncertainty. The other may need active prompts, body doubling, concrete next steps, and a system that reduces the number of choices. When you confuse transition anxiety with executive dysfunction, you keep increasing pressure on the wrong mechanism. Play can be another quiet clue. Some autistic children prefer repetition, structure, or detailed systems in play. They may line things up, build worlds with exact rules, or return again and again to the same scenario because repetition is not boring to them. It is meaningful, regulating, and satisfying. A child with ADHD may want play that moves fast, changes often, and contains novelty, competition, or immediate feedback. The issue is not imagination versus no imagination. It is the kind of stimulation that feels organizing. In classrooms and families, these children are often judged through the wrong moral lens. The autistic child is called rigid, The child with ADHD is called careless or inconsistent, but both may simply be revealing how their brains maintain order in a world that asks for a lot of adaptive flexibility. Even empathy gets misunderstood. Some autistic children are treated as if they do not care because they do not perform care in a conventional way or in the expected moment. In reality, many feel deeply but process slowly, express differently, or become overwhelmed by the emotional complexity of another person's distress. A child with ADHD may care intensely too, but miss the cue, forget the promise, or fail to follow through because attention and working memory dropped the thread. The result is heartbreaking in both directions. Adults assume coldness where there is difficulty translating feeling into action, or they assume indifference where there is genuine caring mixed with poor execution. Children notice those assumptions. They begin to inherit them. And once a child starts to believe, "I am the kind of person who always gets people wrong," they do not merely struggle with behavior, they struggle with identity. This is why the deepest question is never, which diagnosis sounds more accurate from a list online? The deeper question is, what makes life easier or harder for this particular child? And what pattern explains that most consistently? Does your child get calmer with clearer structure, or more distressed by unexpected change? Do they seek more stimulation or defend against too much of it? Do they miss social timing because they do not perceive the cue? Because the cue arrives too fast, or because their impulse beats their intention? The answers are rarely clean, and many children live in overlap. But overlap is not failure, it is reality. Some children are managing both ADHD and autism. Some have traits without a formal diagnosis. Some are still unfolding. Parenting gets better not when you solve the child like a puzzle, but when you become more precise in what you observe. Precision also protects your relationship with your child. A child who is chronically misread starts to brace against the adults in their life. If you treat overwhelm like bad attitude, the child feels accused. If you treat impulsivity like selfishness, the child feels morally judged for a nervous system issue. If you force eye contact, punish sensory escape, or mock a child's need for structure, you teach them that being understood is less important than looking normal. Many adults carry scars from exactly that lesson. They remember not just the difficulty of childhood, but the loneliness of being interpreted through the wrong story. The most healing thing a parent can do is replace accusation with curiosity. Not softer standards, not lower expectations, but better interpretation. Better interpretation produces better support, and better support often produces better behavior. And there is one more paradox worth holding on to. The child is not the diagnosis. The diagnosis, when accurate, is a map of recurring patterns, not a verdict on character, intelligence, warmth, or future. What matters is not whether your child fits a perfect description. What matters is whether you can learn the grammar of their mind. Once you do, discipline becomes less humiliating. Routines become less chaotic. School conversations become more productive, and your child begins to feel the difference between being managed and being known. That difference is enormous. Children can survive confusion for a while. They do not thrive in it. They thrive when someone notices that a missed glance, a late transition, a repetitive question, a blurting interruption, or a sudden collapse is not random. It is information. So if you have been standing in that confusion, moving between autism and ADHD checklists, afraid of missing something important, take a breath. You do not need to become a diagnostician tonight. You need to become a better observer tomorrow morning. Watch what happens before the behavior. not just after it. Notice what brings relief, not only what brings conflict. Listen for patterns. Reduce shame. Ask better questions. That is how clarity begins. And if this changed the way you see your child, even a little, subscribe, because this channel is built for parents who want more than tips. It is built for people who want a deeper language for what family life is actually doing to a child's inner world. And send this video to one person you deeply trust, someone who is trying to build a wiser, steadier relationship with the children they love. Sometimes one better lens in a family changes far more than the label ever could. Because in the end, children do not experience us as experts first. They experience us as interpreters. They feel whether we are reading them lazily or carefully, whether we are forcing them into a script or learning the shape of the person in front of us. And for a child whose inner life is already harder to translate, that distinction can become the difference between growing up misunderstood and growing up known. There are few gifts more powerful than that.